Right, Jules, feeding your chickens.
Now, everybody assumes, as I do, that it's just a bit of corn, but clearly, by the array of goods on this table, it's a lot more involved.
It is, to keep happy, healthy hens, yep.
What have we got here?
This is chick crumbs, and this is designed for chicks from hatch until about 6 to 8 weeks, weather dependent.
Yeah.
It's smaller than the layers pellets, has a coxidant in there, and a few more bits and pieces to give them the best start in life.
So that's what we start out with our very young chicks,
Yeah.
if we've got younger chicks. And then where do we go to from there?
We go to the rearers pellets. This one here, slightly smaller than the layers pellets, and they're on that from like 6 to 8 weeks up to 16 weeks.
So for the first 4 months of their lives, it's those two combined, really?
Exactly, yeah. And once you hit the 16-week mark, they're on layers pellets for life.
Now, you mentioned layers pellets. Here they are. Even I know about these.
Everybody knows about layers pellets, hopefully. That is the staple diet of a chicken. That's their main food.
So everything they need is technically in there?
In there, yes, it is. You could just bring a chicken up on that.
But we need to supplement that with something a bit more exciting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, this is corn, isn't it?
This is mixed corn, yep.
Now, how much of that would you give them?
To one chicken, I would give a very small handful, very small, in the palm of your hand. That is about right for 3 chickens.
And is that considered a treat, as something you would add to the layers pellets?
No, you never mix it with the layers pellets. That is a afternoon scratch feed on the lawn.
So this is to be fed separately?
It is, as an afternoon entertaining scratch feed, definitely. And it's the equivalent of Mars bars and cream cakes to chickens.
So this is just literally chucking it out?
Chuck it on the floor, enough for them to finish in the afternoon. The idea is that they fill their crops up and it keeps them warm overnight.
Ah, right, okay. Now then, what have we got here in this bowl of shell? What's the point of that?
Right, so you've got oyster shell and you've got flint grit in here. Now they use the flint grit, these little bits here, they eat these. Now chickens have got no teeth, so they don't chew any of their food. It's straight down into the crop.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
no teeth.
They don't chew, they don't, straight down. So they need help to grind all these corns and things up, and this is what the flint grit does in their gizzard. The gizzard's a really strong muscle, and it squashes it all up, and with the help of this, grinds it all down.
Isn't that extraordinary? You'd have thought it would hurt. It sounds like a very painful process, a throat full of grit and smashed up oyster shell. No,
the gizzard is a really strong, thick muscle, so it's made for this.
And would you feed this on a daily basis, or should that always be available?
For 3 chickens, you're probably putting a handful down once a fortnight in the run, so they can again scratch feed for it. It's what they do, it's natural to them. You don't need containers for grit. It doesn't rot and it doesn't attract rats. So just scatter it on the floor. The other thing in there is the oyster shell, and the girls take this down and they absorb the calcium from this to produce their eggshells.
Nice strong shells.
And if chickens are deficient in calcium and they don't have it, then you can have eggs passed with no eggshell on.
Really?
And worst case scenario, they'll draw calcium from their existing bones, which can weaken them in later life.
Right.
So it's very important.
So don't lose sight of that. That's
that's important, yeah.
Additive. Now, finally, in terms of what we've got in the bowls, this looks horrendous, and it actually smells
yummy.
Pretty horrendous too.
No.
What can I smell there?
You can smell in there. You've got garlic, you've got brewer's yeast, you've got seaweed, apple cider vinegar to bind it all into the rolled oats, wheat, and mealworms.
Yeah. Now the mealworms, these are dead, aren't they?
They are. They're dried out.
So where do you get this stuff from?
Any good pet shop or feed animal feed outlet will have all of these things, and you can get a lot of it online now.
Now you mentioned that the yeast and all the rest of it. I mean, is that stuff that you've added to this?
It is. I buy it in separate tubs and I add it when needed.
So is this considered a real treat?
This is a real treat when they need it. Normally in the winter colder months, it gives them a great boost and also helps girls go through the molt.
It's a bit like molasses, I suppose, with horses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sugar beet.
Yeah, it's a winter warmer, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And they deserve it being outside.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of actually dispensing all this, some of it, as you say, you can throw out the corn, particularly for a nice little scratch feed. But the rest of it is dispensed, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It saves you money in the long run, and it saves waste. It's the waste and the mess we make that attract the rats, not the chickens.
Now, we've got some examples here of classic feeders.
Yeah, these are the ones I love. You can hang these up, breast height, stops the girls scratching. and the food's there ready for them whenever they need it. They know how much layers pellets they need. They're not overly greedy on it.
So they're not Labradors?
They're not Labradors, no, they're not. They're not.
So that's the plastic version.
Yep.
Now, being an old traditionalist,
You like that one.
I love this one, the galvanised version. That's a real kind of picture of days gone by. I love it. And it feels suitably heavy that it's not going to get blown over.
No, it's not. It's not. And you can hang it. Again, hang it. If you can hang your feeders, hang it. It really does help.
So entry level, that's the place
These
to
I
start.
love. Yeah, I love these. I use them everywhere.
Now, water.
Water, very important water. It needs to be clean and it needs to be fresh. So you need a container that they can't hop on, tip, scratch things in or poo in, because obviously you can get disease from that.
So how does that work?
This one's great. You just literally fill it up from the tap like that, then you pop your lid back on and twist.
Upside down.
And then straight up and hang. Because they'll scratch all the mud and things in.
Again, just keeping the dirt out of it.
Exactly, keeping it nice and clean for them.
Now, you've also got another example down there, which I've also spied earlier,
Yeah,
which
you
I
like
love.
this one, don't you?
Yeah, look, you see, it's proper, it's boys' own galvanised, isn't it,
It
really?
is, yeah.
But that to me seems like a very robust way of doing it, and that
They're
you can just fill it
perfect.
up, tip it
On its side, no poo, no food mud scratched in and things. It's perfect.
Now, something you mentioned earlier, Susie, while we were walking up here, was the thought to add garlic to their water. Mm-hmm. Why?
It's a great immunity booster for them, and they're no different. You know, every animal and us, we all have moments of downtime, and it's just great for them. Just peel a clove of garlic, squash it, and pop it in the water, and it infuses all the goodness in, which
Brilliant.
they take in.
I'm learning so much today. I love these little tips. Now, we've talked about meal and water and how to feed, but you've also got some other items on the table here that would suggest that it's possible to make their food that bit more interesting and a bit more colourful, not least fruit and vegetables. That's a great solution, isn't it? Hanging up apples.
Hang it up so that they have to jump and work for their food. You know, you've got to entertain these chickens. They're athletes. They're there to lay you lots of eggs, keep them fit.
I never thought of them as athletes. I'm never going to look at my two chickens again in the same way.
They can lay 280 eggs a year. That's pretty impressive.
If you put it that way,
Keep them
yeah.
fit. Yeah, you've got to keep them fit and healthy.
You're right.
Yeah.
So that's fruit taken care of.
Yep.
Now, vegetables, carrots, obviously. And what's this?
This is just the leaves off of a cauliflower. They like these. Hang them.
Really?
Hang them. Don't just chuck them on the floor. Hang them. Because when you watch chickens peck, they peck little bits off. Remember, they got no teeth. If you get really, really big bits up, they can fall bombs and obstruct.
Right. So it's easy for them to sort of tear it off if it's hanging.
Yeah, it's natural for them.
And carrots, I mean, who'd have thought it, really?
They love it. Occasionally they might look at it and think, what the heck do I do with that? And you might have to grate it for a little while until they get the idea. They also love it juiced.
So actually then, most things that we have from the kitchen table, they will go for.
They will.
So it's a very economic, organic way of using up all the waste that we use when we're cooking.
It is, yeah, but you're not supposed to feed anything that's been in your kitchen.
Really?
Yeah, that's DEFRA rules, DEFRA regulations. So from your veg patch and things, but nothing that's passed through your kitchen.
Now, last but not least, very young nettles.
Really good for them. And I'd be saying to you, pick them, blanch them slightly, dry them off a bit and freeze them ready for the winter as well.
What is it in a nettle that's good for them?
Nettles have been used for a long time for us as well. And they're full of vitamins and a great protein boost in the winter.
And as well as nettles, I suppose, there's plenty of other things in the hedgerows that can be used as well.
Dock leaves, fantastic. And again, you can freeze those. Blackberries are fantastic. I tend to freeze them in little ice cubes, and then in the summer months you give them an ice cube. They love it. They love it.
Your chickens love you too, I can tell. That's amazing. But I suppose the other point here is that it's a great way of giving your chickens natural sources of nutrients, particularly if you live in a town. If you've got chickens in a town garden, you can get yourself out into the countryside of a weekend, collect all these things, and as you say,
freeze them,
process them and freeze them.
Yeah, it's great. Saves you lots of money.
And of course, there is nothing quite like knowing that you're eating a healthy egg from a healthy chicken.
And they taste different, they really do. Everybody looks at me as if to say, how can they? But they do.
No,
they
I
really,
can now vouch
do.
for that. They most certainly do.
Exactly, they do.
But Susie, that's fantastic. I have learnt some really important things here. I have fed them layers pellets. I will now also feed them corn. They'll also get an extra top up of shell. And in particular, I think, I'm going to start raiding the hedgerows now that spring is on its way.
Yeah.
And give them something to play with.
Just remember, when you're feeding your dock leaves and things, hang them so that they can jump and peck the right amount off.
Make feeding fun.
Make feeding fun, part of their 5 a day.